So I go back to the first vendor that I bought those 2 trays of drills and reamers from to pick up my stuff on my way out, and he was busy with somebody, and so I had to wait while he wrapped up with them so that he could get my stuff out of the pickup truck. And I looked over on the grass next to where he had some stuff out for sale, and I saw this box, and I was like, oh, it's an interesting box. So I opened it up, and I was like, oh, look at that. It's a very, thin plywood put together box, and it's got some kind of fake alligator skin type material on it, but it's definitely got some serious age to it. And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, gee, maybe I could think of something, a use for this. So I asked him about it, and he immediately said, yeah, that's an old thing for carrying tubes. And I knew exactly what he meant, tube caddy. Now, boys and girls, time to gather around for a little history lesson. Back before we had all of these fancy, sophisticated, tiny electronics, we didn't have any of these semiconductors. We had to use what they called vacuum tubes. So, in the old days, we didn't have remote controls. In the old days, you had to go over and turn a knob to turn something on, and you had to wait for the tubes to warm up before you get a picture on the TV set or sound out of the radio. Well, anyways, back in those days, the tubes could be unplugged and changed. So if you had a tube go bad because they would wear out, you could remove the tube, and then, believe it or not, a common place to find tubes back in those days was at the local drugstore. You would go down to the corner drugstore, and they would usually have a cabinet there, and the top of the cabinet usually was a tube tester, so you could plug the tube into the various sockets, set a whole bunch of different switches according to what the chart told you to set it for, and you could actually test the tube. And then if you knew you had a bad tube, the guy would come out from behind the counter, and he'd open the cabinet down below, and he'd find you the correct number tube, and he'd sell you the tube for a few dollars. You'd go home, plug the tube in, and if you were lucky, you were back in business. Well, the guys who went to houses and actually did house calls to fix TV sets back in those days, they often carried tube caddies. So this is a tube caddy. So this was probably a cross-reference chart or something that went underneath these clips over here. And then this would have just been filled with all different tubes, and you can see there was probably some more partitions in here than there are now. And it's got this carry handle on the top here. And then, of course, the dead giveaway is that right here, this literally says tube caddy. And I can't quite make out. Alright, this says the Tube Caddy Junior. So, and this says trademark. Alright, so obviously the company that put this out must have made a senior, which would have been a bigger one. I've actually got a couple of tube caddies, believe it or not, that I still own. From back in my, not so much TV repair days, but you got to realize that even when I was fixing modern solid-state TVs, you would still get people that would come in with the occasional old table radio or something that used vacuum tubes, or guitar amplifiers. To this day, some of the best guitar amplifiers still use vacuum tubes. So the lighting's not very good over here, but there's my other old tube caddy. That's a pretty good size one there. And you can say that says, we use RCA tubes, because I think back in the day that if you bought a lot of tubes from the tube manufacturers, which were usually the television manufacturers, that you could actually get the tube caddy for free. So there's the inside of the tube caddy. Pretty much, it's got this clamshell design, kind of like a tackle box, and then you'd have these little snaps that held these lids closed to keep the tubes from falling out all over the place. And those are all the larger tubes that go in the bottom. Oftentimes also you might store some testing gear and things like that in the bottom there. So I kind of keep that for pretty much sentimental reasons more than anything. I think I got a Dumont one around here somewhere that's orange. Or I may have sold that one, I don't know. Yeah, so that tube caddy there, the Tube Caddy Junior, the guy said $5. I said sure. I said, was it worth it the $5? because I took all of the drills and everything that I had bought that would fit in there, stuffed it all in there, and was able to carry it all out in one shot instead of making multiple trips to the car. Well, I did have to make one trip to take the really heavy drill bits out, but I mean, the small drill bits and everything and a couple other things I bought, they all went right in that case. And then while I was there also, I spotted he had a box right here, and he had all of these plugs. Now you'll notice there's 4 prongs on these, so a lot of these are probably 3-phase. But these are genuine professional Leviton, so these are not cheap to buy, and these are all brand new. And I said, you know, I might want to have a couple of these. So I asked him what he was getting for these, and I think he said $2 a piece. And so then I looked at it. Some of these are out of the package. These are also Leviton, even though a different color. The Fish and Lures is another store. But anyways, the thing was, I said to him, I says, well, how much if I take the whole box? So he quickly added up how many were in here. We haggled back and forth, and at the end of the day, I want to say I got these for 25 cents a piece.
2, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 16 in package, 2 out.
I think I might have gone $10 on this whole box. So that's not quite, yeah, no, how much did I pay for these? 50 cents a piece maybe? I don't know. I'll keep probably 1 or 2 of each of these style, and probably end up throwing the rest on eBay eventually. Boy, I keep saying eventually a lot. And then there was a vendor there who had a tackle box full of lures, a lot of them pretty new, and I toyed with buying the whole thing. He offered me the whole thing for $50, or I think $1 a lure or something like that. So I just went through and, what was it, 50 cents a lure, and I bought 3 lures, because this is an Arbogast. This is called the Arbogaster. So that's made by the Fred Arbogast company that's famous for making the jitterbug, which is my favorite lure. And then this is a, I forgot who makes this, but this is one of those lures that's got a rattle inside, so it makes a racket when it's going on. This is a Rapala, R-A-P-A-L-A, Rapala. This is called the Rapala Down Deep. So you can see with that spoon on it that this thing's going to want to dive deep. So this is a deep water lure. And in this little one here, I was hard pressed to find a third one. And this one is a Rapala Rattling Wrap. So this has got the little balls in it. It's supposed to help attract fish. So I'll probably end up just giving 1 of these to each of the boys to throw in their tackle boxes. That's why I gotta buy 3 every time. So there's no, you know, of course then they fight over who gets what, but oh well, life's imperfect. Oh, I also did spot this one here, and I got him to throw this in for free because the feathers on it are pretty weak. But this is also one of my favorite lures. This is a genuine rooster tail. The great thing about a rooster tail is practically any kid can catch fish with a rooster tail. This buy, which was an unexpected buy, I wasn't in the market for another pedestal grinder, and this is actually a benchtop one. It's got the little feet on it. But I was with my wife and one of my sons, and we were at the eye doctor's, and I had to drive them because they were getting their eyes dilated, and you can't drive after that. So my wife needed me to give her and my son a ride home. So we were in a part of the city that I don't normally frequent, and a little bit down the road from the doctor's office on the other side of the street there was a secondhand store. And a lot of those inner city secondhand stores just have a lot of clothing and jewelry and housewares and junk and whatever else they can stuff in there, and they're not really big on tools. And sometimes you see some bicycles and stuff. But anyways, we're driving down there, and my eagle eyes spot this pedestal grinder on a table out front. So I was like, boy, I really want to take a look at that. So after we came out of the doctor's office, we were coming back by, and I was on the right side of the street. So I pulled over and I said, I'm going to take a quick look at this thing. So I went up and looked at it, and I saw, much to my delight, that it wasn't a cheap knockoff. It's a Baldor grinder buffer. So I was like, okay, so that's a better quality thing than what I'm used to seeing. And I saw this sticker on it here for 80 bucks, and then you get this little pink sticker here, and it's also 80 bucks. So I was like, all right, so we're looking at 80 bucks. I thought about it and said, you know, even if he's willing to come down to 60 bucks, which is not unreasonable for this style grinder in this brand, I was like, So about a week later, I happened to be over on that side of the city, and I decided I'm going to take a little detour and swing by and see if this guy's still got the grinder. Well, of course, the grinder's not out there, so I'm thinking, well, maybe he sold it. So I went in and I asked, and sure enough, the people there were, they spoke mostly Spanish. One of the people spoke no English, and the other person, finally they got somebody to come up front who spoke English. I explained what I was looking for, and then he was translating to the woman, and then she explained that, oh yeah, it had been moved out in the back. They didn't sell it. So they went and found it for me and pulled it out, and we talked price. Of course, 60 was what I figured they would say, and that's where they were. And then they were down to 50, and I said, 40. And they said, they really thought it was worth more than 40 bucks. So then I asked if I could hear it run. So they plugged it in for me. I listened to it run, decided that sounded fine, but I still wasn't, I wasn't in the market for one. I figured it's not really going to hurt me if I leave. It's not something I'm afraid to walk away from. So he sold it to me for the 40 bucks. So I'll fire this up for you. It's got the guards on the side, which I've got my nice, the one that I like there that I bought because of the pedestal itself. That's my State of Connecticut Department of Corrections grinder is what I call it, because I bought it at a state auction, and when I bought it, it had a monstrous locking cage around the top of it that added a lot of weight to it, because it came out of a workshop in a prison. And more than likely the reason why they, pardon the interruption, more than likely the reason why they had to have that big cage around it was because they wanted to make sure that nobody took a knife and or a fork or a spoon or something from the mess hall and then use this thing to sharpen it into a, well, what they would call a shiv. Caught that just in time. It's like it's hit a couple of times. It's pretty rubbed out there. So far from being smooth as glass, most of that noise is stuff rattling on the tabletop. No bad bearing noise anyways. And it's taken forever to spin down, so that's another good sign. So this is a 1/2 horsepower, single phase, 3600 RPM it looks like. So I've priced these on eBay, and they tend to bring 80 to 150 depending on condition. This one also on the back here is actually a chart here, so you can rewire this for high voltage. So it looks to me like this is a dual voltage motor on here. This unit is connected for 120 volt AC at the factory. For 230 volt operation, connect as shown. So there you go. So if you wanted to, you could rewire this for 230 volt operation. But I'm going to leave it as 120, and for the time being I don't have much of a use for it, but I'll find a spot for it somewhere. Alright, so this will be the last item I'll cover in this series here, and if it runs long, well then this will be a two-parter. But right now I have no idea whether or not you're looking at part 2 or part 1. Anyways, this I believe was probably the buy of the month for July. I believe I bought these in July. So I'm always looking on Craigslist for a keyword Aloris, because of course the holy grail in quick change tool post holders, as you know, or as anybody who is in the trade knows, is Aloris. Well, Aloris tool posts are expensive, and I was thinking about that I'd love to get an Aloris for the Vernon. Now the Vernon I believe is a 14-inch swing, and I haven't verified yet the height from the spindle center to the top of the compound, but I think the Vernon should have a CXA series tool post. So I saw this listing come up on Craigslist a while back, and interestingly enough, the individual who listed these as 2 CAX tool posts. Well, I figured the guy just inadvertently got the letters flipped and that they were CXAs, and from the photograph I couldn't tell. So I ended up noticing that, well, they'd been sitting for a while and nobody was on them, and I think he wanted I forgot how much he was asking a piece for them, but it really wasn't that unreasonable, especially since these aren't CXAs, these are CAs. So I ended up taking a drive out there, about 40 minutes away, meeting the guy to take a look at him. Took a look at him, we went back and forth, we haggled. I knew that if I bought both of them for one money I would get the best deal, and we went back and forth, and he was having trouble coming down to what I wanted to pay. And so in the end what ended up happening was, I think I ended up giving, so then when we got down to the nitty gritty, I said, well, do you have any holders to go with it? I also noticed that this one's got the plaque on it, and it says CA, and it almost looks like there was a letter after it, and I think he may have mistaken for an X. This one, the rivets are there, but it's missing the plaque. But it is a genuine Aloris, because the great thing about these Aloris tool posts is it's stamped Aloris right here. They both operate smoothly. Neither one of them look like there's any major damage on them other than being dirty. They've been around the block. The handles are not loose and stripped out, which, you know, sometimes can happen if somebody's been abusing them. So then he went and checked and says, well, I think I might have something. He went into a box drawer that he had some stuff in, and he dug out, and he opened the box, the drawer, and you could tell he hadn't opened it in a while because there was a mouse nest in there, and he pulled out, all covered with mouse urine corrosion, this original Aloris. This is a CA4, further confirming what I already figured out, which is that these are CAs. And this is I believe this is a boring bar holder. This one, also original Aloris, is a CA54. You can see the Aloris emblem there, and this is a Morse taper holder. And last but not least was this funky one here. This is a CA35, and what this is, and this one's actually in very good condition, it's almost new, doesn't look like it got a lot of use. What this is this is a base for a chuck. So if you've ever seen the drill chucks that can mount on these tool posts, that's what this is. But I've never seen just the holder without the base, just the holder without the chuck on it. So I don't know if they sold the chuck separately, or for some reason somebody stole the chuck off of here, or what. When these are on eBay with the chuck, they bring some serious money. And in the CA, it's interesting. What I noticed is the larger the holder, generally speaking, the more expensive the tool post is. Oddly enough, though, the market is hotter for the smaller holders. I was at an auction recently, and a Dovetail manufacturing company, I believe, DTM, AXA holder brought big money. Had a lot of holders with it, but the tool post brought decent money. So anyways, so getting back to this, I wanted to get the two tool posts for $150 for the pair. He didn't want to do that. Then he brought out these three, and I sweetened the deal. I said, give you $10 a piece for this, $180. We went back and forth. We talked. He showed me his shop. We talked about machining, different things, and then by the end of our conversation, he said, you know what? He said, I know they're worth more than that, but he says, I can sell them to you because I know what I paid for them. He had two more of these on two of the lathes. I think he had two lathes in there. But he had bought all four somewhere for one money. So he knew what he had into him. So he'd rather turn that money into money to buy other things anyways. So, and he had them sitting there for a while. Sure, he could have relisted them as CAs, and maybe he'd gotten different, or he could have gone online with them and gotten more money for them. But he was happy to take the 180. I was tickled pink because I figure I'm into these tool posts for $90 a piece, and I'm into these holders for $10 a piece. And I figured if I can use the CA on the Vernon, if it's not too big, then I figure I'll keep the holders and the tool post, and I'll sell the other tool post and probably get enough to cover my entire outlay here of cash for this. So I might end up getting basically a free CA tool post with 3 holders. So as far as the size on these things go, Aloris now makes a very small quick change tool post size for, I think, like jeweler's lathes or really small hobbyist lathes. I don't remember what the designation is for that, but it doesn't follow the designation for most of the others. So the smallest one that's common is the AXA. I don't have an Aloris AXA. I have a Dovetail Manufacturing or DTM AXA. This, by the way, in case you're not familiar with this name, this is a complete knockoff of an Aloris wedge style tool post, and this was made right in Clifton, New Jersey, which is exactly where Aloris is made. So they're made in the same town in New Jersey and have the same design. And my understanding is that there may have been a situation where somebody in the company split off early on and went on their own and had rights to the patent or something, I guess, or design, and made their own version of this. But the point is, don't be scared of a DTM. It's a good quality tool post. And I got this for a real deal on at the flea market. So this came with a bunch of holders, and I haven't done anything with it yet. I was going to put it on the Atlas lathe, but I decided that I didn't want to do that, because when I go to sell the Atlas lathe, I think I'm going to probably hold on to this. And even if I decide to get rid of this, this is going to be one of those things where I'd rather put it on eBay and have a bidding war drive the price up than just throw it in with the lathe. So that's the well, let me keep that there for a minute. So that's the AXA. So the next size up is the BXA. So this is an Aloris BXA. It's dirty, but it's also an original Aloris. You can see the placard on this one's really biffed. So you can see the size difference there. So there's not much size difference there. It's a little bit. So this is the BXA that I got a really good deal on. I got this for $50 with this holder on it. So I don't really have any BXA holders to speak of. This handle seems to be on wrong. Anyways, this is probably going to go on the Hendy when I finish the Hendy, because the Hendy is a 12-inch swing, and I think this is the perfect size for that. So between this size and this size is the CXA, which is what this gentleman thought he had, but he read it as CAX. But what he really has is the next size up from CXA, which is just plain CA. And then I think there may even be a size above that, but can you imagine? That's for a really big lathe. So I think this is for like a 12-inch swing, and then the CXA I think is for 14 to 16, and then I think this is for 16 to something, I forgot what. But that's a tall tool post. Alright, so I just grabbed the scale because I was curious. So that's like 3 3/4, it looks like. That's like 3 3/4 tall. The BA is about 2 3/4 tall, and the the BXA, and then the AXA is like 2 3/8 tall. So here's the compound for the Vernon lathe. I remember that this is the it looks just like the compound for that south bin that I stripped for parts, but I remember that this is the Vernon one because I remember it had this brazed carbide cutting tool in it when I bought it. So it's got the old style lantern tool post. It's probably an Armstrong. But anyways, I can look at this, and I'm not going to put it on the machine just yet because I want to clean it up. But if I measure the height from the top of the compound right here, which is what, when the Aloris is installed, it actually sits on top of that. So if I measure the distance from there down to here, it's almost exactly 3 inches. It's just under 3 inches. Alright, so now I'm over here at the lathe, and I've got this V-block is exactly 2 inches tall, and I've got these parallels are 1 inch long, 1 inch tall parallels. So if I can let me move this over a little bit. A little precarious. I took the bolt and T-nut off. That ain't gonna work. There we go. Alright, so that gives me an idea of how this will be size-wise. So now I've brought the camera angle right down on the same plane, looking straight across here. And it looks like I'm going to be able to get away with using these this CA tool post on here, because that's the halfway point of the tool post. Looks like it's almost exactly on center with the center line of the spindle, or close to it. So looks like I'll be okay. The only thing is, I saw the other night, I saw a post on Practical Machinist website, and a gentleman was talking about that he's using a CA. He's actually looking to trade a CA for a CXA, and he mentions even that the CA is a more expensive tool post. So what he'd like to do is trade the CA with one tool post, with one holder I think he's got. And he wants to trade that for a CXA with a couple of holders. Maybe do a trade like that to try and make it a even value type thing. Which is kind of funny because that's exactly what I would have been trying to do. But if he doesn't have any success, then I would have to be like second in line for that deal. I'm probably going to be better off just selling off my my extra CA tool post and maybe using proceeds from that to either buy a CXA tool post, and then maybe I could sell this one and buy some holders. I don't know. Oh, so the thing he was mentioning was, I think he said he had a 16-inch lathe that he was using the CA on, and was talking about that he'd really rather have a CXA because he described this as being kind of cumbersome. And I could see that. I mean, this is kind of a big block to be sitting there on a lathe this size. But I guess the point I'm proving to myself here is if need be, I can use this. Just to satisfy my curiosity, I just threw the BXA holder on here, and you can see the BXA holder wouldn't quite cut it. The center line is quite a bit farther. It's almost an inch below. So I have to adjust the holders up really high. So it certainly looks to me like a CXA would probably be perfect for this lathe.